Hey everyone, it's time for another low quality YouTube video. However, this time we're going to be discussing 7.3 power strokes exclusively. No other diesel content on this video. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe because it really helps me out. Encourages me to kind of keep making these videos, continue to grow the channel. You guys are always so kind. I've learned a lot from comments over the years. Please keep in mind this is only my opinion. I do not pretend to be an expert on this. I believe Clint Allen has a ton of videos on the 7.3 power stroke pertaining to individual sensors and things like that. I always encourage people to look at his videos because he's pretty much the subject matter expert in my opinion on the 7.3. So if you haven't already seen his stuff, check it out. Not sponsored by him or anything like that. Just passing on another good YouTuber. Anyway, let's get to the 7.3. First off, the 7.3 power stroke is very reliable. The HEUI injection system in it is probably one of the most robust diesel injection systems out there, besides and arguably the P7100 pump Cummins. With that being said, the P7100 gets a lot of credit. The HEUI injection system in the 7.3 doesn't really get the credit that I think it deserves. And it does have some room for improvement. So mainly what we're going to discuss in this video is going to pertain to the Super Duty. However, it will pertain also to some of the OBS trucks as well. So first off, I've owned several 7.3s over the years. I've maintained a bunch. I've actually worked on 4 separate trucks in the last few weeks. One was a 2002 7.3 power stroke. It was in a 250, a 2001. It was a 220,000 mile ZF6 truck. Worked on a really cool OBS. It was an F450 or F Super Duty because they didn't technically have the 450s at that time. And then another late 99 or early 2000 truck as well. So, a couple things you need to know about the 7.3 if you're watching this video. And you probably came here because you're either new to a 7.3, you found one that you're trying to restore and put back on the road for your business, or you've gotten handed down one that's been sitting for a decade or more. First off, there's a couple improvements that can be made. Ford did a really good job, well, International did a good job at building the motor, and Ford did a pretty good job at putting it in the truck. When it comes to the 7.3, there's a couple areas that cause a lot of people problems. 1, fuel issues. 2, electrical issues. 3, boost leaks. A lot of people don't realize this can be addressed with just a couple mods. I'm not trying to so much add power or performance here, but to kind of fix some of the things that get worn out with age and time. One of the biggest things is the sensors. The IPR, the injection control pressure sensor, the EOT sensor, and the CPS are critical to keep this engine running healthy. A lot of times the ECU is smart enough to run the engine, it's not smart enough to tell you when it has a problem. A lot of times IPRs get weak, the injection pressure control sensor fails and leaks oil internally, you won't even notice it, but the inside of the plug will be soaking wet, and obviously when it's coated in oil, it's not getting proper resistance, it's not reading right because it uses a 5-volt reference. CPS is known to leave people on the side of the road and cause random hesitation and misses. And of course the EOT sensor goes undiagnosed a lot of times, especially with cold start stuff. Had a customer a couple weeks ago, another shop had changed glow plugs, did all kinds of stuff, and I went out to look at the truck. He thought they had put in bad glow plugs or messed it up. Went to crank the truck up, the truck started instantly. I mean, it hit hard, it was boom. I was like, man, this thing's nice. Within a second, the RPMs dropped like 600 RPMs. And the truck was trying to idle at 600, even though it was like 20 degrees outside when it should have been idle at 1100. What's wrong? Data log it. EOT sensor was working somewhat, but it was 25, 28 degrees outside, and it's sitting there reading like it's 120 degrees outside. So that's sending a very different signal to the ECU when it should have been idling much higher than what it was. So, easy solution. EOT sensor is like 28 bucks, easy to change out, swap it out. Boom, truck fires up, runs great. Problem solved. You'll see that a lot. But anyway, first thing, sensors. Riff Raff Diesel, I'm not affiliated, I'm not sponsored. I know I'm wearing a Riff Raff Diesel shirt by coincidence today because I have a bunch of them. I have a bunch of XDP, and you name the brand, I probably have a shirt from them because that's what happens when you work on diesels and you spend a lot of money working on diesels. You get swag sometimes, or you pay for it and you buy it for your wife. But either way, so getting back to the 7.3, we've addressed the sensor issue. If you don't know when the last time your sensors were changed, just go ahead and switch them. Change out the IPR too. I was changed out. I've done those 4 sensors before in a customer's vehicle. Like a week later, they call me and they're like, "Hey, what'd you do to this truck? It's running great." Well, I changed out your sensors and your regulator that had 200,000 miles on it and were 20 years old. And they're not that expensive. All those parts I listed, if you buy them through Ford, and I would only recommend you going through Ford for them, it's like $500. I know it's a lot of money for not a non-performance mod, because we'll put a freaking 5-inch exhaust on one before we'll replace a 20-year-old sensor, but trust me, it's worth it, especially if you're having drivability problems. That's a crazy loud bird. Besides that, where's another issue of concern for the 7.3 Power Strokes? Boost leaks. I typically don't see a lot of boost leaks at the intercooler itself. It's usually in the spider. Whether this is an OBS truck, where it goes directly from turbo down into the plenums, or where it goes, I know a Super Duty truck where it goes through the intercooler setup. Generally, the issue is the boots that are below, right above the intake manifold or plenums, however you want to call them, those get crushed over time. Also, the boots loosen up because they get exposed to oil, they get exposed to heat. You get a lot of oil through the CCV on these. It just breaks them down, they loosen up, they stretch, they don't seal properly. And the truck won't tell you that, hey, I've got a heck of a boost leak. A lot of times you won't even know it. Driving around, losing boost, turbo's working harder than it's supposed to, it's a little bit more laggy than you may expect. Once again, I put boots on a truck and all of a sudden the guy's like, "Oh wow, this thing used to puff smoke whenever I would get on it, now it runs super clean and it's more responsive." Well, yeah, your turbo's not trying to work as hard and it's making boosts sooner. So yeah, it's going to be more responsive. Thanks to your map sensor's going to see that. So that's a big one, and that's an easy fix. CNC Fabrication makes a really nice complete intercooler boot set for it. It's like $250. Comes with made in the USA clamps. They're nice and beefy. Way nicer than the factory ones. It comes with new boots, and it's a great kit. Riff Raff also sells them, as many other companies do. If you don't have the heart to spend the $250 on all of them, I recommend doing at least where it goes into the plenums, because that's where you have that really, really thin stamped metal. And that's where it gets deformed. It's no longer circular. Sometimes they actually get crushed in, like the size of your thumb. It'll be a dent there in the metal. It's really hard for those boots to seal that. To fix that solution, I'm going to give you 2 separate companies. Riff Raff Diesel is my favorite with this. They make a really good insert. It's a lot easier to install, and I'm going to say it because the CNC Fab ones are extremely tight fitting. I mean, you put those things in there and they will tell you if you hammer, they're meant to be hammered in and never touched again, because those suckers are never coming out of those plenums. I can tell you that right now. You have to really beat them in there, and that might not be your cup of tea. If I had to pick between the two, I'm going to go with the Riff Raff. Once again, I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not making money, but I have installed easily a half dozen of theirs and never had a problem. They do sit a little bit looser in the plenum itself, but it's still a tight fit. And honestly, by the time you put the boots on there and clamp it down, that clamping force is going to hold it in there. They've got a lip on them, so it's not like they're falling in the motor either way. They can't go anywhere. So Riff Raff's my preference. Yours might be different. I'm not knocking CNC Fab. If you really want something that's never, ever going to come out, and you're okay with beating the hell out of it to get in there, run it. They're good products. They're a good company. I'm not knocking them in any shape or form. My preference is Riff Raff. Okay, so now we're moving on. Got our plenums, we got our boots, we fixed our boost leaks, hopefully. Now, we're going to address probably the number one issue. The fuel system on these trucks is really good, but it also has some problems. The filter that is there is not a bad filter. The problem you run into is actually in the fuel tank. If you guys have experienced running out of fuel at an eighth or quarter of a tank, you probably know what I'm talking about. A common mod for this is what's called the harpoon and hutch mod. Let me explain that real fast. There's basically 2 strainers that are up inside of your fuel filter sending unit, for lack of a better term, or fuel sending unit. that's actually in the tank. There's these two little strainers that literally, they're just inline strainers. There's also a shower head looking thing that's at the bottom of that. Sticks down maybe about that far, and that goes to the bottom of the tank. It has a screen on. Over time, that screen breaks apart, falls off. A lot of times that shower head piece will fall off, and that's why you run out of fuel at 1/8 of a tank or 1/4 of a tank. And when that falls off, now your two tubes, your return tube and your pickup tube, are sitting right beside each other, and they only have those strainers in now. The fuel coming out of your return tube goes right back into your pickup tube. So you're getting basically aeration or agitation in the diesel fuel itself. And then you're also getting the heat from that hot diesel fuel that's coming back from the fuel filter housing sitting in the valley of your engine. So that can lead to some really nasty things. It can really lead to a little bit of air getting into your fuel system. Air on any diesel fuel system is a bad thing. It can also create that constant heat cycle where that hot fuel gets a little hotter every single time it's being circulated around, and cause cavitation and stuff like that. The easy solution for that is what's called a hutch mod. You'll take the shower head off. Instead of having that rubber and plastic piece, you take a metal tube and run it down for your pickup all the way to the bottom of your tank. And then you have a 90-degree that comes down and goes over for your return. The kit itself is like $180. There's some nicer kits that are maybe $250. The worst part about it is you gotta drop your fuel tank, which honestly, the age of these trucks, you probably need to clean them out anyway. Once you drop that fuel tank, it's really simple. The second part of the system is, now that you've gotten rid of those strainers, you really want to add a filter before your lift pump, which is located on the driver's side frame rail. To do that, it's just a spin-on filter that basically ends up in line. So you run your fuel line from your pickup all the way down. Usually you mount it somewhere on the frame rail right before your lift pump, and you spin that on there, and usually you'll get a bowl at the bottom of it. That way you can see your fuel. You know if you get contamination in it. A lot of them have water separators, so you can just drain it right there. You're just adding an extra filter in line. You don't have to go crazy with this, guys. Like a 1 micron filter is more than adequate, because previously all it had was a screen there. You're just adding additional filtration, and the fuel pump itself will handle it. Whether it's a factory Ford pump, or if you have upgraded yours or swapped it out for one of the Bosch ones are like 80 bucks off of Riff Raff and some other companies like Diesel O-Rings. I think they might be up to $90 now, but easy. It's a simple, cheap pump that is extremely reliable. Those Bosch pumps are known to last for like a decade or more. I've got some that have had 150,000 miles on them. They're not failing. They're good pumps for the money. And it's a lot better than paying $540 for one at Ford. So if you can get one from one of these other companies, go for it. That's pretty much it for the hutch mod. It's, once again, not a performance thing, but it's definitely a good idea on your 7.3. Fourth mod. This one is going to be a really simple one. On the 7.3s, you have ports already on the top of the cylinder heads where you can essentially connect either a stainless steel braided line or a hard steel line and connect both cylinder heads in the middle. It's called the don't quote me on this, HPX mod. Riff Raff sells them, CNC Fab sells them, 1,000 other companies sell them. Some people make their own because you can do it with just hydraulic stuff. All you're doing is connecting the driver's side and the passenger side heads in the middle, connecting the high pressure oil system. What does that do? It allows the oil to circulate a little bit better through both heads for the injectors. And it also helps that injection pressure control sensor be able to see a more accurate reading of what's going on between the pressure and the heads. You're basically just adding more circulation, helping equalize the pressure between your two cylinder heads. Some people say it helps the truck start a little bit easier. Some people say it idles a little quieter. Some people say it runs a little smoother. I've had it on a lot of trucks. I've installed it on a lot of trucks. I've never had anybody say anything bad. I've done both the CNC Fab and the Riff Raff kit. The Riff Raff kit is hardline. The CNC Fab is braided. Both kits are like 60 to 70 bucks. Dude, it's like the cheapest mod you can do to your 7.3, okay? And not a performance mod, but a good mod to do. And really, If you get on those websites, you'll see the pros and cons. You'll hear people talk about them. You don't see a lot of people saying negative things about them. You can do it with basic hand tools, very simple mod. The next one is going to be the biggest, and that is a regulated return fuel system. What do I mean by regulated return? I'm going to start by referencing a non-regulated return kit, which is the CNC Fab 4-line kit. I think this is a great kit for guys who are going purely for performance. It looks super good under the engine bay. It sits in the valley of the engine. It gets rid of your fuel bowl. Of course, you have to have a filter before, you got to have some sort of filtration. But it's a really awesome kit. Sinister also sells a really beautiful regulated return kit. My personal favorite is the FRX kit from, you guessed it, Riffraff Diesel. Why? Because it's like 200 bucks. And the Sinister kit is over $800. What I like about the Riffraff kit over the CNC kit, number one, it's super easy to install. It still retains your factory regulator return spring style system, so you can change your pressure just by changing out the spring, but it removes the deadhead issue in the cylinder heads, because if you look at your 7.3, you have two fuel lines going from your fuel filter housing. One goes to the driver's side head, one goes to the passenger side head. There's only feed lines going to those two heads. So your return line is coming out of your fuel filter housing. That's what goes back to the fuel tank. So once that pressure is applied inside of those two feed lines, if there's air or anything that gets in there, it has no place to go. It cannot circulate back through the system. So that's one reason why you get, anytime you have the fuel system apart, it takes a long time to get the truck going. Anytime you have to do maintenance on the fuel system, it can be somewhat of a long process trying to get that air out of there. And when you do have an air leak or a fuel leak, it's going to make its way up through that system and go through your injectors. We've already talked about how air and diesel do not mix. They're not good inside of injectors or fuel components. So anything we can do to allow air to escape the fuel system without going to the injectors is a good thing. It also adds, that fuel going through the cylinder heads adds almost a little bit of a cooling effect to the injectors, because now that fuel is not just trapped in there basically getting hot while it's waiting to go. It's the injector says, oh, I need this much fuel, I don't need this, I'm gonna send that back. And then it travels back through the regulator return system. It's a super easy system. What it does is there's a short line that goes to the passenger side of the engine bay. There's a long line that goes up by the turbo on the driver's side, and you allow that fuel to basically make this kind of pattern through your cylinder heads. So now it goes out, comes back, and goes back to your fuel filter housing, and then if it's not used, it's sent back through the return. It's a really good system, and I like Riffraff's because just about anybody can install it. Riffraff now sells a little special socket that you can get on the two plugs, because they're, I don't remember what size they are. I think they're 8mm plugs on the back of the driver's side head and the front of the passenger side head that you have to remove to hook up those fittings. The passage is already there. It's just hooking up the lines and allowing it to go back. And the beautiful billet piece they give you, that block, is absolutely gorgeous. It's very well machined. The quality you get in the kit for 200 bucks is really, really good. It comes with everything you need to install it, even diesel rated thread sealer. But if you're doing anything on diesels, do not use thread tape, use diesel rated thread sealer. There's plenty of companies that sell it. Find the one that works for you. With that being said, not kind of a mod, but more of a maintenance issue. It's a good idea to rebuild the fuel filter housings and the poppet valve for the regulator return on these trucks. If you're doing a Riffraff kit, guys, you're honestly like 30 minutes away, and that's being generous, of just pulling the fuel filter housing. Riffraff sells a complete rebuild kit for the fuel filter housing for like, I think it's $24. Now, the biggest thing is that regulated return, or sorry, not the regulator return, but the regulator valve. There is a kit from Ford. I'll try to put the links down in the description when I get a chance to update this, or at least the part numbers. But there is a rebuild kit specifically for the poppet valve, and I don't want to call it the poppet valve, the poppet seal on the regulator return shiny piece, for lack of a better term. It's about 80 bucks for that rebuild kit. I think it's ridiculous because you can't get the stupid poppet seal by itself, but it's Ford, and what are you gonna do? So with that being said, guys, these are only the 5 things that I find really help these trucks, especially if you're not, none of them I would consider a performance mod, but what I would consider them is a reliability and drivability mods. They're really simple. Almost anybody can do them themselves. If you're even half mechanically inclined, you can do it. If you don't feel confident, please take it to an actual mechanic that knows what they're doing, not your friend. Find an actual diesel mechanic to take care of you, because these trucks are way too expensive to screw up, because then you bring them to me and you get a several $1,000 bill. Anyway, that's about it. Once again, OBS 7.3s, Super Duty 7.3s, extremely reliable. Plenty of them over 500,000 miles now and still kicking around. That one has 350,000 miles on it, 351,000 now. It's been a really good truck. However, it might be going away because we have something else in the driveway that we're going to be showing you. Really excited about this one. It's actually a little bit smaller, so we're going to have to figure out how to consolidate things and get a little bit more lenient with what we do. But anyway, as always, please like, share, and subscribe. This has been a long video. Be nice to your neighbors. Times are crazy. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Hope everybody's looking forward to Christmas. Spend time with your family. As always, all the way, guys.